Australia has invested billions of dollars in mental health. There's a reason for that. Joining me today is an amazing, I'll say, a living legend in the mental health space. I'll call him Dr. Francis Aqua. The only two Africans in Victoria that have been awarded the Member of the Order of Australia, which is a very prestigious award.
Basically, I had gone to England as a young man, and I had opportunity to do nursing. And like a lot of young men, you find a girlfriend who then says, Francis, how come you be doing an enrolled nursing when you are more qualified or had more O-level qualifications than me?
I feel like spiders are moving all over their body. I just thought about, maybe there's one cousin that I had one time that said, I don't know whether I saw this curly with me, and I said, there's a demon chasing this guy, let's go for deliverance, let's go for deliverance. Sorry to cut you short, but I just want to ask you, like we're talking about loss and everything, but what major mental health illness have you seen in the African community majorly?
100 people will be using marijuana. When you look at it, 20% of the people could be affected.
I can see social media really impacting mental health. But I know we touched symptoms, we've touched funding, support out there. But what I would like to find out from you most especially is, I know with age, dementia sets in. That's another mental health crisis as well. But are there things that we're doing when we are young?
People sometimes laugh at me, and somebody told me today when they grow up they would like to be like Francis, but I said no, I don't give that away. But how do we balance our life? I've got an article on this health care magazine, and it's talking about changing the paradigm of illness to mental wellness. And when I sent a photo to my daughter, she said, "Don't breathe the air in Wuhan."
Is Wuhan very industrialized?
No, they're saying that we're the COVID came from Wuhan. So Wuhan is very polluted, actually.
Oh, no wonder Donald Trump called it
China virus.
Chinese virus.
Calling you from the village.
Yeah, see, mama needs money.
Mama needs money.
Because send the money.
Yes, if I tell you my last holidays, you will just
please share. I'm
sure. Did you travel to someplace exotic like Africa?
My journey started from Melbourne to Singapore for 2 days.
Okay.
Of course, I've been to Singapore a number of times, but I went with my wife, and we went to visit a number of places, including the temples, the markets, and things. And then we jump on a cruise ship.
On a cruise?
On a cruise ship.
We're not scared of the waves or that. I'm very worried about. I'm very scared of. I've always wanted to go on cruises, but when I look at them, like Titanic.
No. These cruise ships today, right? Which one was it? Was it the what's it called? Princess. What do they call it?
Royal Caribbean.
Those things are. It's like a whole city.
Yeah.
A whole city.
I'm like, wow. I've always wanted to go on one. I will go on one very soon, but yes. I'm making up my mind on. Hi guys, welcome back to the Cornerstone podcast. My name is Mario Obo, and I'm your host. At the Cornerstone podcast, we always share things that happen, in our daily lives. We touch topics such as relationships, health, mortgages, general stuff. But most especially, we invite people to come on and, share their ideas, their thoughts, their experiences, and then we draw some strength, ideas, some education from, from the various things that they have actually experienced. Today's podcast promises to be a very interesting podcast because not only is it informative, although it's a little bit of entertaining to, by the time the discussion starts, but the most important part is that there's a lot of information that will be shared here today that would improve your life and also people who you care about. I would like to introduce my co-host today. I always like to, celebrate this guy because I like his idea and, in short, I just hope that one day, he would, be our president of Nigeria. I know he says no, but I always like to say one day he's going to be our president. Mr. Kemp, thank you for coming to the Cornerstone today.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now, today's podcast, we want to talk about mental health. How are you feeling today? Australia has invested billions of dollars in mental health. There's a reason for that, and that's what we're going to discuss today at the Cornerstone podcast. Joining me today is an amazing, I'll say, a living legend in the mental health space. He's an African man who has done great things in the sphere of mental health. And joining me today is Mr. I'll call him Dr. Francis Aqua. Francis is an influential mental health advocate with over 35 years of experience in the field of mental health nursing. Over the years, Francis has contributed profoundly in improving vulnerable communities, particularly immigrants, refugees, and people from cultural diverse backgrounds. In 2011, Francis founded the Positive Mental Health Program, which evolved into the Positive Wellness Recovery Center, in short, PWRC. He is Executive Director of PWRC and the President of the Mental Health and Wellbeing Foundation, a non for profit organization operating in both Australia and Ghana. Francis Aqua, throughout his career, has been recognized for his outstanding contributions. In 2024, Francis was appointed a member of the Order of Australia, a prestigious award approved by King Charles III. Francis has also received numerous accolades, amongst mentioning a few. Mr. Francis Aqua, welcome to the Cornerstone podcast today. Thank you for coming.
Thank you very much for
Welcome,
having me
sir.
today. Thank
Yes,
you.
sir.
So I'll read it through your bio, right? Because the first time I heard about you was through Fred Alali. He was on the podcast and he talked about the only two Africans in Victoria that have been awarded the Member of the Order of Australia, which is a very prestigious award. So I looked through your profile, I looked through your LinkedIn. I was like, wow, man, this guy has really. I was like, wow, just reading through your contribution in this space. But most especially, I would like to, touch base with you. Like, what drove you into mental health?
Well, it's a long story, but basically, I had gone to England as a young man, and I had opportunity to do nursing. Unbeknown to me, there are different levels of nursing, but I decided to take the easy way out. So I decided to do 2 years of nursing, um, uh, and like a lot of young men, you find a girlfriend who then says, Francis, how come you be doing an enrolled nursing when you are more qualified or had more O-level qualifications than me doing a registration? So I did my placements. As you know, nursing, we have to do different placements in the medical ward, surgical ward, a geriatric ward, and a psychiatric ward. When I got into the psychiatric ward, I felt at home. You can talk to people, you can understand what their issues are. And therefore, I decided, why should I be washing bedpans instead of talking to people? And that drove me into the mental health area. So I did my general nursing qualification, and the honest truth was that I didn't spend one day working in the general nursing area. I went straight in to do my mental health nursing. And the rest is history because I've continued that career from Epsom in Surrey to a place called Severals in Colchester and came to Australia in 1986.
1980.
That's
like 38 years.
That's like 38 years ago. You've been working in that space. So, France, I've got a question, right? We keep on here about mental health, mental health, mental health. Could you just maybe this, because I know people probably might have different definitions. Just according to you, what would you define as mental health, just so we can have a baseline?
Yeah. So, as an African, when we start thinking about mental health, unfortunately, we think about the people who, inverted commas, are crazy or mad on the streets of Accra, on the streets of Lagos, or for that matter, Kenya, Nairobi. But it affects everybody, and it's across the board. It doesn't matter whether you are rich, poor, or indifferent. I'll use a simple example. And earlier on, we were talking about funerals, things like that. Unfortunately, when we lose something, and my friends, gentlemen here, if you lose your mobile phone today, how are you going to react? You dive into a situation of grief. When we lose something, we go into a state of grief. We feel sad, we feel lost, we feel a sense of hopelessness. We can take us into a state where we don't even enjoy our appetite, and therefore we can't enjoy food. We feel crazy. We feel to the extent that people actually get to that stage of losing their memory, losing their mind, and therefore wants to, I'd rather not be here because I have so much precious things on my mobile phone. But that applies to a loss of a loved one in that sense that we have lost something. Obviously, in Australia, people even think about their animals more valuable than even human beings. So these are the classic symptoms of loss, whereby if what we say in our mental health area, if these symptoms persist for 2 weeks or more, this then develops into what we call clinical depression or clinical symptoms. And that's where our mental health of looking at well-being and illness. And the illness starts with all the symptoms that I've described. And therefore, that's where we need to take any action. Do you want me to continue?
Yes,
Or-
please.
Oh, yeah, by all means.
Yeah. So in this area, that's where the start of mental illness comes in. Thereby, somebody gets diagnosed with depression because they're experiencing a high level of loss. Although clinically we say 2 weeks, unfortunately, a lot of symptoms starts to develop over a great period of time, a long period of time. Sometimes it's an issue of trauma. It's an issue of bullying. It's domestic violence. Sadly, the world have changed. Drugs have overtaken society in a very, very big way. Young people start experimenting, and therefore things start to go wrong. But when we think back, and we think about us as Africans, of course, we will say, oh, this doesn't affect me. But unfortunately, all these things affect everybody. The biggest issue about us refusing, or not even refusing, but because we're not aware and not seeking treatment, we then relate it more until the situation is much worse. And therefore, the people are so unwell that the biggest issue is stigma. The family then think, oh, the person is crazy, and therefore they don't want to do anything with them. And the more the person get worse, then the person actually moves from the area of depression into what we call psychosis. Psychosis is when the person starts experiencing unusual symptoms, hearing voices where there's nobody around, seeing things that may not be there. In fact, when people use drugs or alcohol, they can even experience what we call tata hallucinations. So they feel that there's something crawling on their body, like cockroaches or spiders or even a snake coming out of their body.
Yeah.
And if these things are not treated adequately, they can react to it. They may even take a knife to try and cut themselves
Oh,
as a
and that's what we
result.
call like self harm. They say self harm. It's actually not. It's a response to the degeneration of the illness, I believe.
Absolutely.
Wow.
So, yes, people tend to want to remove whatever is going there because as we sit here, three of us, we can't see, but the person is reporting. I can see a spider on my hand.
And they
It's
can
coming
feel
out
it.
of it.
And they can feel it, yeah.
And you can feel it.
Yeah, and
Yes.
to them it's real.
Real.
Yeah, while to
Absolutely.
us we're looking at it, but we can't.
You can't see anything.
We can't see anything. So then, I could be wrong, but you feel the person not believes that. Oh, people like, for example, let's say the person comes and says, "Oh, there's a spider crawling up here. I can feel, I can feel, I can feel it." But then us, we can't see. We start thinking the person is crazy. That might make the person now withdraw a bit more from telling.
Yeah.
Like, because he feels like these people
No
don't
one is
care.
listening to him.
No
So
one's listening
the
to
person
him.
just feels crazy. So I'm not
Yeah.
going to share what I'm going through anymore. They're going to withdraw.
Absolutely.
Hmm.
Even I gave the example today about, how do we actually manage our funerals? Okay. So I've described these symptoms which can occur in the sense of when we want to bury somebody, we go through the grieving process. And so, yes, initially we go in a state of denial. We then get to a stage where we start accepting the fact because we have a funeral. In the Christian faith, of course, in the Muslim faith, the person gets brought to the mosque within 24 hours. The important thing there is actually the gathering where people have to actually witness that this person has actually passed.
Yeah.
And therefore, however, the rituals, we pray for that person and we physically go and bury that person. And that bears a collective, um, collective process where we all then accept that the person has actually passed away. In our Christian faith and culturally, of course, we then go through a big mourning festival, which you almost like even a party, and yet that ends. Sadly, in some societies, that doesn't occur. People don't even know when their loved ones have been buried, when their loved ones have been cremated. And so, how do those people feel? So, they then take on this issue, the unfinished business. And instead of a funeral happening, the person mourning the person, they then retreat, they withdraw, they become isolated. Those symptoms continue to increase. They experience other, um, unusual symptoms. Is the dead body talking to them?
Yeah.
Am I hearing voices
Yeah.
from that place? Should I react? Should I go and join that person who had passed away? So those are strong beliefs that some people have, i.e., it's because of witchcraft. It's
I was going.
because
I was going to touch that. I was sorry to cut you in because when you said I feel like spiders are moving all over their body, I just thought about maybe there's one cousin that I had one time that said I don't know whether something's crazy with me. And I said there's a demon chasing this guy. Let's go for deliverance. Let's go for deliverance. So sorry. I'm sorry to cut you short, but I just want to ask you, like we're talking about loss and everything, but what major mental health illness have you seen in the African community majorly?
well, it's across the board. And fortunately, we've had people with schizophrenia, which is the psychosis. So initially, let's even take out the simple one, which may be what we call drug-induced psychosis. So somebody has gone out and started using drugs. People sometimes, in fact, I might just use the phrase, 100 people will be using marijuana. When you look at it, 20% of the people could be affected. Another half of those 20%, so 10% of those people could end up having illness for the rest of their lives
Just by
by
smoking
smoking
marijuana.
marijuana.
Wow.
Wow. So they can be in what we call a drug-induced psychosis. So they start hearing voices, they start seeing things that are not there. They become what we call delusional. Ah, sorry to use this term, but they are Donald Trump of Australia. And they have conviction that they believe in these things. And this continues. If these symptoms persist over what we call a 6-month period of time, and a lot of the time what happens is that their psychosocial environment deteriorates. So obviously things like not sleeping, but not they end up with what we call reverse sleep pattern. So they sleep during the day, they are awake at night. They don't want to interact with society. They can't care for their basic needs, such as their hygiene. They can't relate to people. They become aggressive in something, more anxiety, sometimes because of misinterpretation of information. Oh, I put my food there. You've eaten my food. In fact, there may have been no food there, but because they misinterpret information, they think the television or the radio is actually talking to them. We call it ideas of reference. So something that have been mentioned on the radio or the television, they will immediately claim it's about them rather than whatever the topic is. And over a period of time, they then end up with that diagnosis. It could be what we call initially acute psychotic episode, which then turns into schizophrenia.
Wow.
Once it becomes schizophrenia, it's a lifelong disorder. And the disorder requires ongoing treatment with medication. And sadly, it's I'll describe it as the beautiful Melbourne weather, which goes up and down. And therefore, sometimes when they are feeling good, when things are settled, sleeping, starting to eat properly, starting to relate to people, they think they are cured, which is not the case. So they stop taking their medication, and therefore they relapse again.
So schizophrenia can be managed just through medication.
It can be managed through medication, and over a long period of time. I have a non-African, but a lady who I've been looking after for the last 15 years, and she's fully employed and takes her medication on a regular basis.
Now that woman now, for instance, who's married, who is she married or
Single.
Single. Okay. Now let's say she gets married to some guy who doesn't have schizophrenia, and she has an episode that could lead to domestic violence, right? And then the police. Oh, you're smiling because I know you've dealt with this before. I've seen a lot of things.
Yes,
So now she's
yes.
married to some guy who's
Yes,
like nice, and they have an episode, and and the guy has been tolerating a lot of behaviors, not knowing that the wife is actually mentally ill
Yes.
at that point in time. Now and then, before you know, the police get involved, and the guy is arrested or locked up for something that he knows nothing about. How can how can one manage better when you have a spouse who's got mental health?
But shouldn't the person know that you're like? Would you marry a woman now without knowing her background? Shouldn't you know that
Yes,
the
yes,
person?
Your spouse can only tell you what you want to know about them.
Yeah.
They can, if they have some
Yeah,
spouses have
could be.
STDs, and they don't even tell their partners they have STDs.
Could be.
Yes.
You know.
Unfortunately, yes,
Yeah.
people can be
Yeah.
not be aware, or to what extent.
Yeah.
We also have something we called bipolar or manic depression used to
Yeah.
be the previous name for it, but we call it bipolar.
Mm.
And people can have a good life for a long period of time,
Mm.
and circumstances can change, and they could relapse for not taking their medication or for various reasons, stresses,
Yeah.
or for that matter, having a child in that space.
Okay.
And the best thing is about education, becoming more aware.
So
I,
like sorry to cut you short. So the spouse should be what if the spouse is not aware and it goes out of proportion? How best can this be managed?
yeah, that's well, I'm using the word education. For
Mm.
example, I'm a master mental affairs state trainer who or instructor, and I've done a lot of training within the African community, and even had the permission to actually run some mental affairs day training in Ghana. And we've had people from Nigeria and other countries even attended my mental affairs day training.
Mm.
And as I said, I've run a number of training courses within Australia as well. It gives people the opportunity to become more aware, understand the symptoms of depression, anxiety, psychosis, eating disorders, and the various other mental health problems.
Mm.
There is a myth around that mental health clients are aggressive, but not. They're not. It's like me and you. But if you are cornered in a situation where you believe that this person is the devil in front of you, how are you going to react to those people? By educating the partners about the person's illness. For example, encouraging the spouse, whether male or female, to take their medication, making sure they receive follow up, going to see their mental health professional. It could be a mental health nurse, a social worker, or a psychiatrist or a psychologist on a regular basis. Then they understand what is happening. So the support is so crucial in relationships. And I've seen people with good relationship, one partner being unwell, and yet they have fulfilling lives because they get those supports, and also being able to talk to professionals. Sometimes we end up with the law, privacy, which goes sometimes too far.
Mm.
But you are part of that household,
That's
and
correct.
therefore you need to know certain things.
Mm.
Yeah.
Dr. Francis, just there's something you touched on about the training that you're doing in Ghana and Nigeria. I'm just curious because when I was in Nigeria, I wasn't there for long though, but I tend to notice that people don't really talk about mental health like that compared to here. When I first came to the West and when I started traveling, that's when I started hearing about mental
Yeah.
health. I'm just curious though, from your experience, do you feel or do you think that there's a difference between how mental health is perceived in Nigeria or in Africa in general compared to here in the West? And then where do you think that thing comes down to cultural? Because sometimes in movies, like sometimes here you watch a movie, they talk about oh my health, mental health, this thing. But in Nigeria it's like, oh that madman, that
Yeah.
crazy
The
person.
guy is the
You
guy
know,
know well. Oh.
the guy know well, you know, that's the thing. So I'm just curious though to get your perspective on that.
So I've been, like I said, in fact, I've been away from Africa for more than 40 years. And in 2012, I actually came across a human rights report showing how people in Ghana are still being treated mental health, going to what they call prayer camps to see prophets. In fact, in 2013, we started doing some work around it in Ghana, and we ended up inviting people from other parts of Africa. So, Ghana, Nigeria, Zimbabwe, we had somebody from Kenya, and we had our first conference. And we went to visit a prayer camp, and I literally was frozen. I just stood there and started crying because I'd seen human being chained to a tree.
What?
A,
Chained to a tree.
a tree, a human being. Well, not just a human being. Human beings
Yeah.
chained to trees, and
Some of them being flogged as well.
it was the most saddest day of my life. And one of the young men had gone to university, got involved in drugs, and have become unwell. And the family has actually deposited him in this prayer camp. And in Ghana, there were numerous prayer camps there, but this particular one, not only were they treating people with mental illness, but also people were going there for other physical illnesses. Sadly, the mental health clients or patients were the ones who were chained because they perceive that they're going to get aggressive,
Yeah.
and therefore that was the control. So we have because of stigma, as I use the word, that's where people take their children, their family members out of the village to these prayer camps, and out of mind, out of sight, and that type of. So we have bad perception around mental health. I'm pleased to say that over the last 10 years that we've been working specifically in Ghana, but also with colleagues in Nigeria and other parts of Africa, things are people becoming more aware. We are talking more about mental health in the media. We are doing conferences on a regular basis. We are planning our conference in Ghana this year, September.
Okay. What date
Yes,
in September?
we haven't set up a date yet, but it will be in middle and end of September, around the 25th to 27th of September, which may coincide with Suicide Prevention Month or precisely. So we are engaging with in Ghana. There was a new Mental Health Act that was passed, and we now have a mental health authority who is overseeing mental health services. Up until 5, 6 years ago, there were only three psychiatric hospitals in Ghana. They were all based in the south, in Accra. Ankafo is near Cape Coast, and one north part of Accra.
Yeah.
So can you imagine if you are in the northern part of Ghana and have mental illness, you had to be brought down
To the west, to the south.
to the south.
at your expense.
And again, if they can't accommodate you, you have already become really unwell. How are they going to transport you? They got to shackle you,
That's
So chain you in the car.
chain you.
So so you don't, because but maybe these families have experienced violence from their loved ones who's got a mental illness, because like I've watched videos on social media, right, where I'll see like a young person take a knife and kill the mom. The mom is bleeding on the ground, and I watched the one video that I watched that was very disturbing was that the guy was the guy just was standing there. People were like staying away from him. The woman was bleeding, and he just stood there with a knife. Obviously, something that had happened to him upstairs.
So, like I said, education. So, by educating people around what may be the mental health concerns, early intervention. So, we have the ability, for example, in Australia, our first point of call is our local GP to start engaging and then referring to specialists. So it could be a mental health nurse, a social worker, a psychologist, even before it reaches the level of needing a psychiatrist to be involved. But in Australia, that's what happens. And gradually, in places like Ghana, we now have psychiatric services at the general hospitals. So if there are any issues, they can be sent to a general hospital, see a professional, and have some treatment, and early intervention is the key. By supporting somebody when symptoms starts to develop, they can be arrested. They can start getting some help, getting a good night's sleep, starting to eat properly. If they are placed on medication, this needs to be supervised. Sometimes the people are what we call insightless, so they're not aware of what is
What's
happening
going
for
on
them.
around them?
So they don't know what is going on around them. So they need those support, and then they start, once they become more aware of situation, then they need to continue to take their medication. Of course, the movies exaggerate some of these things to sell their
Because sometimes
film.
they want views as well.
Obviously,
I'm guessing.
obviously.
You know, Dr. France,
But
I'm just going to just touching on this thing. You said there's a new facility now in Ghana. There's a new act as well.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, and because I know in Australia here the government tends to support a lot when it comes to mental health.
Yeah.
But is that the same for Ghana? Well, I mean, I know Ghana and Nigeria, obviously different countries, different this thing. But are you seeing the governments there supporting, or is it individuals like yourself go there and you push and you campaign, and then the government says, okay, we'll do this, or is the government's really like saying, hey, let's try and tackle this? I'm just curious to know that one.
It's quite sad
Yeah.
that when you look at even the country's budget, very minimal is spent in Ghana on mental health. It's very low. Um, as I said, over the last 10 years, we've been working with different groups to improve the whole quality. So yes, we have a mental health act. We then push for certain things. Did you know that I'm not 100% whether it's still in Nigeria, but do you know that attempted suicide is a criminal offense in some African countries?
Yeah, apart from even criminal offense, like suicide, they believe that you go to hellfire. You have eternal damnation if you commit suicide. So it is a criminal offense in many African countries.
Yes.
Wow.
So Ghana has been lucky enough that it was actually through a private member's bill that it was rescinded, maybe last year or the year before, probably 2023, and it's no longer a criminal offense. But previously, if you attempt to suicide and you're unsuccessful, you get taken to police cell.
Wow.
But the changes that have occurred, which are positive, is that people can now go to a general hospital, and there are mental health clinicians or practitioners at the general hospitals. The Ghana, for example, don't receive the same level of care that we receive here in Australia.
Yeah.
And even here, even though we have a lot of money spent on mental health, we still crying that there is an acute shortage
of funding. Wow.
in the mental health field.
Sorry, how much funding do you think would be adequate? You know,
How long is a piece of string?
that's what I'm trying to figure out. Though, because,
I think there's no, you can't
Yeah.
set a cap, because as the population grows in Australia, so the funding has to grow. But Australia has done very well in terms of funding to the best that they can. Although there's
Yes.
more to be done.
Yeah.
Same in the US, same in other parts of the world that they funded, but obviously there's still a shortage, obviously because they have other parts of the economy where they have to also fund. But Francis, please, can I ask you, when you talked about adults, drug use and loss and all that, but what about young children who, like, even they've never tasted drugs, they've never had any drugs or any crisis in life, to have mental health issues? Have you ever dealt with young people who have had mental health like that before?
Yes, I guess at the moment we are seeing what we call in ADHD, so
Okay.
attention deficit hyperactive disorder. While we may not, unfortunately, it has been put in the DSM, which is the official Bible for mental health, and again we copy everything from America, unfortunately, and that has come in the increase. So yes, children who have a lot of behavior problems, diagnosed or undiagnosed, can show certain levels of behaviors
Yeah.
that then manifests into mental health issues. So, putting into context again, families who are neglected, children who are parents who are using drugs. I believe you work in the justice system,
Yeah.
who are going through the justice system, through the revolving
Yeah.
door. Those children get neglected. Our First Nation people in the areas where drug and alcohol is the, you know, it's rampant.
Yeah.
Of course, these children get affected, and they get affected by different traumas, and the trauma then manifests itself over a period of time into becoming mental health issues. And so they get caught up in their parents or their family situation. We have children who end up as ward of the state because they can't stay with even one family. They move from place to place, and therefore they get into unsavory environments.
And most of them
which is
find themselves in the juvenile justice system
system.
just
Yes.
because of that.
Yeah.
What are the signs of ADHD, though?
Well, it's what we call the attention hyperactive deficit disorder. So there are some unknown chemicals imbalances in their uh, brain that don't allow them to function the same way. I don't like the word normal,
Yeah.
but that's the difficult situation whereby, yes, I'll describe a young man that we got has supported
Mm.
um, from parents who have separated. There was a level of domestic violence. The mother had to work, but also had two children, a 5-year-old and a 2.5-year-old child. The young man, I went to the house, was climbing the cupboards and going through the top of the fridge to get into the fridge to get an ice cream.
Wow.
And that was the wow question. There was no mom can't
To
say
supervise, yeah.
yeah, able to tell him to just, I'm talking to Francis for a minute, just sit down for a minute. That's what we call the hyperactive. So gets to school or kinder, you have the bottle of water there. No, he has his own bottle of water. He wants your water, and can doesn't know the word stop or please or anything. They just need attention. Just need to do something. So yes, they are treated with some medication, but also a range of what we call psychosocial supports, getting involved in some active activities um, outside school,
Therapy?
outside therapy, being able to engage with him, getting in something that of interest. And I know you like your computers and things like that. Sometimes they're very good, but they can only focus on one thing. So they could be very, very good at drawing, but everything else is zero. They could be good at music or doing something specific. Right? So that can be a challenging aspect.
Hmm.
Yeah.
So they're very different, and what the thing to spot in them is hyperactivity that is always running.
Yeah.
Very interesting.
Yeah.
It's really interesting watching them like grow. Because from when they're kids, like I remember this documentary I watched about them. Like for them, like when they're young, they can't. For them to sit down like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
for 5 seconds, they can't. They gotta move.
Yeah.
But then when they start getting older, it tends to drop off a bit. But then, like you mentioned, they focus on like these guys can become whizzes
Yes.
when it comes to like maybe focusing on one thing.
Yeah.
Like all their attention is on that thing. And give them 1 month, they become master. Not they become masters per se, but they become like really, really good
Yeah.
at that one thing.
Yeah.
It's really fascinating. To
I'm
watch.
just curious to know though, if a child has ADHD, will the child when the child grows into an adult, will that diagnosis degenerate to, like you talked about, in drug psychosis, whatever? Would ADHD progress into something more dangerous later?
No, not in that form. As the brother said here, they are the people. If treated and supported properly, they become very
Great.
good and great in what they can do.
What if they're not
with-
treated?
with it. These are the lost uh, group of people, unfortunately, that sometimes ends up in the justice system
Yes.
because they can't um, continue school in that environment. So they are really eventually kicked out of school because they are too destructive for example, in secondary school. Primary school, probably they could just be pushed along. But when they reach teenage years, when they're supposed to be able to focus on multiple things, be school on time, go to a school where you have to tuck in your clothes, uh, say please to the teacher. They're going to be the sometimes what we end up doing the opposite of what they are required to do, and so they become more challenging, and sooner or later they get kicked out of school, and they can be isolated in their own home, and no support. And I said I was saying, speaking earlier on, sometimes we think the problem started yesterday, but when you track back some issues, you will see that, wow,
There's a progression.
this has been happening for a long
Long
time.
time, yeah.
And of course, families, um, it doesn't matter in this occasion whether they are Australian or African families, they all keep the thing stigma. They decide to not say anything.
Yeah, cover it up.
I'll cover it, and it becomes, inverted comma, normal. There's a strange boy in that house. There's a strange boy in that house, and that's what the society accepts.
Yes.
Until they start doing something unusual or become noticed. So their behavior become extreme, that the police end up being called
100%.
and being diagnosed.
There's a lot of them, not obviously not all of them though, but some of them, because they want this adrenaline rush. They go for all these like high risk things because it gives them this adrenaline.
Yeah.
Adrenaline junkies. That's why like sometimes you hear in the news like, oh, some teenager took a car and they were speeding. Like it's not necessarily, like it's just like they want that rush. Obviously not all of them though,
Yep.
but some of them just want that rush. Oh, they want to go skydiving. They want to do this because they need something to fill that deficit.
Yeah.
Which is really fascinating to actually see them. But as you mentioned, when you hit them, when you not hit them, but when you get to them early and you can basically help them mitigate that.
Yeah.
Like these guys become whizzes. Like some people that have autism, if you give autism and ADHD, if you give them like a math problem to solve, the way their brains work,
yes,
you'll be like, wow,
Yeah.
these guys are geniuses. But then for them to sit down for 5 seconds, good luck.
Because
Good luck.
early on in the podcast, you talked about when you lose your phone, how do we feel? And that drove me to ask a question that many people say that social media has impacted mental health. Obviously, in your practice, you've dealt with that. I don't know how social media can impact someone's health because literally everyone is on social media these days. So I'm keen to know, how does social media affect mental
I
health?
was thinking about this same question
'Cause,
you're gonna
yeah,
ask too.
'cause
Because attention, your attention. Because because I used to work at Google before, right? The algorithm. Well, let me not say Google did it, but a lot of them, the algorithms are there to keep you engaged and on the platform for longer. because the longer you are on it, the more ads they can show you, and the
Exactly.
more ads they can show you, the more revenue they can make.
But the thing is, how does, because
Yeah.
everybody's on Facebook, TikTok, Instagram.
Speak for yourself, fool. Me, I'm not on TikTok. Speak for yourself, Mark.
Okay, let me speak for myself. I am on a few social media platforms, and I enjoy it. I like it, watching it. Like when I'm at home, little, maybe I have that spare time from working or doing some stuff. I'm always on social media, and I mean millions of people are on social media. But they say social media impacts mental health. How does it?
So you weren't going to mention the other name, and I will mention the other name. But once upon a time, it started with the letter T. Do you know what it's changed from T to X?
Okay,
Mm.
okay.
And maybe as far back as 12 years ago, I didn't know what that social media was all about. And I got referred a client. It's a female, a single lady. In fact, she owned her own flat. Parents have bought a flat for, so she wasn't working. And she was spending literally 24 hours a day.
Wow.
And at that time, I'm talking about 12 years ago, I mean, if she had continued, probably she would have got a billion, a billion tweets by this time.
Wow.
Because at that time, she has done over 250,000 tweets.
Wow. Just tweeting every time. Wow.
And my recollection goes to when we first came, I engaged her, and as soon as she came into my office, while we were talking, every 30 seconds she'll pick up the phone and start doing something, which I guess eventually I got to know that that was tweeting. And what we end up doing was that as soon as she arrives in my office, I get my hand out and she gives me her phone. And then I put it next to me and then we engage. The most interesting thing that has happened was I encourage her, and we still use the media platform to develop a social network. So I'm not sure whether you've heard of Meetup,
Meetup, yeah. I know
Yes,
Meetup,
I've
yes.
heard of it.
Yeah.
Meetup group, and she formed a Meetup group. It wasn't for romance. It wasn't for personal relationships, but people with similar interests uh, came together and met, went to the movies, um, went to the hotel to have a meal. Everybody paid their own way. In fact, she indicated for the first 6 to 8 years, they had to. There was no fees when you joined the group. So, and later on, last year, early last year, they celebrated their 10th anniversary. It still have over 100 members, and at the anniversary, which I gate crash without permission, but I gate crash because I knew of the. I was telling somebody about this group, and then I found out that they were actually celebrating their 10th anniversary that week, and I went. So I turn it around and use it as a positive aspect of social media. Sadly, what we're saying that it's affecting people's mental health is when you are engaged with only your phone and you're losing all your social connection with other people. I work throughout COVID assisted a lot of people during the COVID. I found that especially ladies who were still working full time, their productivity has dropped. Why? Because, of course, they were working with their phone or their computers. They had their breakfast were in front of the computer, lunch, and in the evening, in fact, they use their computers to watch their movies. So you are faced with the screen 24/7, literally. And we had to look at other aspects of disengaging from the social media. Got people, and when you come and visit the church in Kaukalo, we got an organ there if you can play.
I can't play, but I'd love to see it.
But we also have ukuleles. Because
Wait, what is that?
ukulele is
Yeah,
a
it's
small guitar.
Okay,
Little
okay,
guitar like
okay.
that.
Yeah, and getting people to think about other interests or some interests that they used to have, and bringing it back to their attention. They were able to do other things socially without relying 100% on the social media aspect. So it's about changing the mindset.
Yeah.
How do we change our mindset? How do we, yesterday I got invited to a fashion show, Indonesia fashion show. That period of time to actually do something different. We talk about the African Music Festival.
Mm.
We are doing Ghana Independence at Kaukalo,
Yeah.
and we're gonna have young people to come in and do some drumming and dancing. Even though Francis doesn't do any dancing, I think he will try and clap his hands
Yeah.
to be part of that. But thinking about doing other things, where's I can see some nice paintings at the back there,
Yeah.
and getting people to engage with other programs. Take the pen, draw, um, and that is much more healthier than just spending time
On the phone.
On the
I
phone.
love that.
But isn't that
I
isn't
love
that
that.
like she's just like um how would I put it? Addicted to her phone. Because I'll tell you, one time when I first started doing my public speaking, right? When I was actively speaking on Facebook, some guys reached out to me. This is very very funny, but I could my mental health was actually troubled now when I think about it. So they reached out to me saying, "We like your posts. We want to pay you $500 a day to just post our ads on your page. This is how much we're going to pay you. So if you allow us post 10 posts, that's $5,000." I was like, wow, my daybreak has come. I was like, wow. So I said, okay, what do I need to do? So they gave me a link to click. I clicked on the link and I signed in my password on the link, and they said within 24 hours they'll make their first payment. I was so excited. I was like, wow, walking around my house saying this my platform has actually paid. So I'm, paid off. So I'm making profit from, my speaking. And then finally, I went to sleep. In the morning when I woke up, I get a message from one of my followers saying, "Mario, what's wrong with your page? There are naked women on your page." I was like, what? I go on my Facebook page and I'm seeing pornography on my page.
Yes, yes, yes.
I panicked. They have removed me as the administrator of my page. I think I went into some depression that period. I didn't know how come a page I just started, how it had affected my mind.
Yes.
And so I ended up, asking. I had to go back into my page because I had put another email as an administrator.
Recovery.
Yeah, so I went there, got in. I saw put another different name, some Indian name, or I think some different name that was there. I think I was posting every day, posting content every day on my platform.
But that's what you agreed to now. You agreed to
I,
post
I,
content.
I didn't know exactly, but they told me ads. Ads was not porn. Because see, I'm
specify the ads. But you agreed to it now.
I agree to it, bro. I agree because I needed money. But I can see now how the impact was quite troubling for me.
Yes.
I had to go call people who I knew in the US, who because I visited Facebook office in when I was in California. I went there, so I had one or two people that had taken their details and just in exchange, I had to contact them to tell them, please, I need your help, and they send me a link of how I should do it and report it, and which I did, and eventually got my page back. When I got my page back, I was like,
Due to this sigh, this relief.
do you know till today
massive
I
relief.
still get these messages?
Yes.
They're still trying to
They
get
still
you back.
message say, one time I just said, okay, yes, what should I do? He gave me the link. I said, God punish you for doing
The
that.
guy is praying that you click on it.
Exactly. So I can
Yeah.
I can see social media really impacting mental. But what I want to find out from you is, I know we touched symptoms, we've touched funding support out there. But what I would like to find out from you most especially is, what are the things that we can do to prevent a degradation in mental health? Because I know with age, dementia sets in. That's another mental health crisis as well. But are there things that we're doing when we are young to prevent us having a degradation in mental health in our older age?
People sometimes laugh at me, and somebody told me today when they grow up they would like to be like Francis, but I said no, I don't give that away. But how do we balance our life? Um, uh, I've got an article on this health care magazine, and it's talking about changing the paradigm of illness to mental wellness. So, how do we maintain our mental wellness? How do we maintain our balance? You know, um, we are so skewed, and you actually touch it on. Of course, we come overseas, and what we're looking for wealth.
Yeah.
Um, and so we keep chasing the wealth. But how do we balance those sort of activities? We forget. So I use the wheel of life, what I call the wheel of life, to balance. Who is our family? Okay. What is our connection with our family? There are a lot of people who even live with their parents, their siblings, and they are still lonely. They are still isolated within our family. That's the first one to think about. Who is family? We have relationships. Relationships are so valuable. Personally, I have the most fantastic relationship with my general manager. We started the business. In fact, I credit my business to her, the growth of my business to her, because we have fantastic communication. You know, they said people shouldn't answer their phones at the weekend any longer or after hours. I texted her this evening coming here from Epping, and she responded, and we had a chat for half an hour to get to here. I work with my children. I don't do the same thing with them. Who are your neighbors? What's your relationship with your neighbors? Have you heard of F45?
Yes, F45, yeah. I used to go to F45 actually.
Okay, I won't say anything that will get us into trouble.
Yeah.
But I had a F45 gym next to my previous business, my location of my business, and I thought, fantastic, we're going to have a good relationship. And I went and introduced myself. We can exchange clients and everything. I described them as the boom boom business because they were just making noise.
Yeah.
And they were stealing my car park spots,
Mm.
and that type of thing. So we have to think about who are, what are our relationships, even at work.
Yeah.
When we think about that, I actually call it the social environment. Where does your children go to school? Where do you go to your gym? I arrive at the coffee shop. I don't have to ask what or tell what coffee I'm getting, whether I'm having milk, sugar, or otherwise. The people at my coffee shop knows what Francis have. That's developing relationships. We have our health. Unfortunately, we forget the most important part of our health. For me, I describe our health as being from the head, you know, the,
Frontal lobe.
yes, from the tip of the hair on your hair. In fact, the people on the podcast may not see my hair. I'm not sure, but my when my wife says your hair is too long, I have to do something about it.
Yeah, me too. My hair gets too
Me-
long at times, so I have to cut it as well.
Me too. I'm just wearing this cap to cover but deep down. You see my head. There's no hair on my head at all.
But it's the head from right from the to our toe. Sadly, we neglect the most important part of our body,
The brain.
our brain. How do we feed our brain with good information, with good food, so that we can make all the good decisions that we are?
But what is good food to the brain though?
It's yeah. I was going to continue on that aspect.
Sorry to cut
Yeah,
you short,
yeah. But yesterday, one of my friends called me and indicated she was experiencing some difficulty with one of her staff, who it's challenging. And I've had lots of staffs who are challenging. But one of the things that work for us is we ended up, and I mentioned my general manager, we ended up having a mentor who comes in, and therefore we are able to say everything. We can talk about things. How do we discuss issues? Of course, if you are in a relationship, my wife, what is going to make her happy? Did I take the flowers home? Did I take the chocolate home? Did I attend that important appointment that she asked me about? Did I tell her about coming to Werribee Sunday evening at 7 o'clock? Communication. So our health remains from the head right to the toe, but looking at all aspects of our body. How do we care for? Once I said to my friend, I'm going to see my GP. He said, are you sick? No, I'm going on holidays. I have my checkup before I go on holidays. What's wrong with that? Do we think about those stuff? How our teeth. My client sends a message last week, distress, because she's just discovered her teeth is all turning black and they were all hurting. So we had to help her with an appointment to see the dentist. How much do we neglect other parts of our body? We go to what I've termed as learning. Gentlemen, where's your mask? Why am I not wearing any mask today? Didn't we learn a lot from that over that period of time? It changed from what we, this generation, will call the fact that the war, we had never been in it. And a lot of us have never experienced any war. The other day, I traveled in China and passed through Wuhan. And when I sent a photo to my daughter, she said, don't breathe the air in Wuhan.
Is that is Wuhan very
Yeah, Wuhan is where
industrialized? Is it?
no, they're saying that where the the COVID came from.
Oh, okay.
COVID came from Wuhan. So this Wuhan is very polluted actually.
Oh, no,
Mm.
no, no wonder Donald Trump called it
The
what did
China
he say?
virus.
Chinese virus. Okay.
So those things on our everyday basis, we need to be conscious about these things. How do we manage? How do we learn? It's not just the education, but also actually the experience of everyday life, how we transport that. So how, if you are not working, what are the consequences if you are not employed? How do you keep yourself sane? How do you keep your sanity? We go to our finances. The other day, I met a young man, one of my clients, a teenager. Can I loan him 5,000 to start a business? And I said, in fact, we have some saying. In Ghana, we say peswa, but here I'll translate to peswa. A peswa by peswa, build a house. A cent by a cent, build a house. And I ask him, and when I go back to see him, is to learn what compound interest is. How do we start? Even I said, do you know that now we can collect these bottles and get some 10 cents from it? If you collect 100, how many are you going to get?
$1.
Yeah. But if you keep every day,
No, maybe more than $1.
yeah, you get yeah. But assuming if you get a dollar a day, how much do you get at the end of the year?
That's true. $365.
Yes, and then you multiply that because you've seen that you can get 365, and you want to get 10,000 or 1,000 cities. What are you going to do? You're going to work more harder,
Yeah.
and then you could have that. So finances is something sometimes we don't even think about. Now, yeah, young men, I'm afraid. When I came to this country, interest rate that people are fighting for now, do you know how much interest rate was?
No, but I'm guessing it was low.
Very low. No, very high.
It was 18%.
18%.
In 1986, 1987.
Was it like an inflation crisis at that time, or?
Well, that's what the country was all about. But people were still buying houses at that time. We bought our first house in 1987.
Do you mind if I ask, like, was it? I mean, you don't need to ask, but how much was the house then that you guys?
Oh yeah,
bought?
yeah. I still remember.
$5,000.
It was 88,000.
88,000
in Victoria.
In Victoria.
Man, good luck finding anything less
Yes.
than 500.
You wouldn't even get a pinch of land for that
Yes.
price.
Yeah.
And that house was sold for probably 800,000.
You see that?
It's all relative.
Yeah, it's
but
all relative.
Obviously,
value of money.
Yes, you got to, but you got to start. You got to think about that. Why do we have insurance? Okay, and they say, I don't need insurance, but then you hit somebody's Maserati. Where do you go? So those are all part of our learning process. Our next area, which I call the recreation and vacation. What is recreation?
Enjoyment, like going to the pool, play basketball,
Exactly.
gym.
Just taking time off to
Yes.
focus on something.
And that's the vacation. Is actually moving away. In fact, of course, in Africa, we don't even think about that. We just take our leave and we stay home. But it's so fun.
Traveling is a good thing for the mental
Of
health.
course.
No wonder Australians are very big on traveling.
Yes.
They work the
West.
whole year, and then like they take like 2 3 weeks off and then they say, oh, I'm going to Vietnam.
Yes.
I'm going to, but Africans would like to work and work, save, work, buy a house, live in Africa.
It's
do
because these
this.
guys don't have Mecca and
Yeah.
Obinna and
Yeah, at home.
Tunde calling you from the
Yeah,
village.
yeah. See, mama,
Calling them
mama
from
needs
the
money.
village,
Oh,
telling
nah.
mama needs money.
They go send the money. Send the money.
Yes. If I tell you my last holidays, you will just
Please, please share. I'm
What
sure
was
to
it? What was
hear.
it? Did you travel to someplace exotic like Africa?
Well, my journey started from Melbourne to Singapore for 2 days.
Okay.
Of course, I've been to Singapore a number of times, but
Mm,
I went with my wife, and we went to visit a number of places, including the temples, the markets, and things. And then we jump on a cruise ship.
Uh-oh.
So from Singapore, we went to Thailand
On a
Wait.
cruise.
on a cruise ship.
We're not scared of the waves or.
No.
I'm very worried about. I'm very scared of. I've always wanted to go on cruises, but when I look at them, like Titanic.
no. These cruise ships today, right? Which one was it? Was it the what's it called?
Princess.
Princess. What do they call it?
Royal Caribbean.
Those things are.
Yeah,
It's like a whole
Yeah.
city.
Yeah.
A whole city.
I'm like, wow. I've always wanted to go on one. I will go on one very soon, but
Yes.
I'm making up my mind on
It's good for your mental health.
It's
Yes.
good
Tell
for your
yourself
mental. It's the
good
best
for your mental
holiday.
health.
it's good for my mental. Please, my followers, please send me money. Let me go and let me go.
So yes, so we do the cruise to
Mhm.
Thailand. We come ashore on 2 occasions. Stop in Bangkok and then Pattaya. One day we go on a organized tour to visit places. One day we go by ourselves, independent tour, and we get to visit different things. Get back on the ship, then go to Vietnam for another stopovers, 3 stopovers in Vietnam, going to Ho Chi Minh City and Hanoi, and it's enjoyable. Finish up in Hong Kong, have 2 days in Hong Kong, then took what I'm describing as a slow, fast train, only 8 hours on the train, traveling at 350 kilometers an hour.
That's not slow.
Okay,
That
is
you
it,
didn't feel
is
anything.
it one of those high speed ones in China?
Bullet
Yeah, those
train.
bullet trains in
Boom!
China.
That's good.
Boom.
Yeah.
And you didn't even know
You didn't know
You
were
can't feel it. I've
anything.
heard like you cannot feel it.
Anything
You
at
just
all.
don't know. But unless you know that you're on it.
that's
hard for
Japan,
you to
isn't
know.
it?
No,
this
China.
China.
Yes, Japan has that.
Japan has it too as well.
Japan has theirs, but China I think has the longest one in
Yeah.
the world. Longest ones in the
Yeah.
world and fastest.
Yes.
We should bring it to
And,
Africa by God's goodness.
And enjoyable. Finish up in Beijing. Going to Tiananmen Square again. You're younger to know exactly what happened in Tiananmen Square, but those of us who were here at the time knew exactly. But then we visited some of the old cities.
I'll say some of us know about Tiananmen Square. What happened there? Although it's a
well,
really
that was the
interesting,
revolution by the students.
yeah.
And unfortunately, the Chinese government went and brutalized them.
Yeah, there's this very famous photo of that guy with his shopping bag
Yeah.
in front of the this thing, in front of the tanks.
tanker. Yeah. And but we went and visited some old, the Forbidden City where the emperors used to live, and then it's my bucket list ticked is we walk on the Great Wall of China.
Wow.
We only read those things
In books,
in textbooks.
But the thing with holidays, I think our parents actually did it back in Africa then, where they take us to the village. Though we lived in the city, going to school, get a Mercedes Benz, drop you in school, bring you back, like you get having all that life, and then towards like the 20th of December, like most of the Easterners do that, they put their families in the car, they're going to Umbise, and we're going to the east. They're going, then they travel, and then in the east they have festivals come around. So I think we all did these things unconsciously, not knowing that it was actually impacting positively in our
Absolutely.
mental health. But now with poverty, that's what I want to touch base now with you, because not everybody can afford the luxury of even going to the village now in Nigeria. Talk about because to travel now in Nigeria from let's say you're going from Lagos to my village Ekboma, that's not cheap right now. So the economy, the stress, financial stress has actually impacted and changed all these things. But what I would like to ask you is when you are experiencing poor mental health, right? What supports are out there for people who are experiencing poor mental health?
Well, in this country, in Australia, we have a lot of services available. Unfortunately, as I said, stigma. So, from our African point of view, I work in the system for a long time. And sadly, what I used to say is that we, the Africans, don't come through the front door. Why?
Stigma.
Stigma. And therefore, we don't seek help early
Hmm.
until things have deteriorated. We mentioned earlier on somebody becoming aggressive. Of course, when they are experiencing their hearing voices, they change completely. They're no longer part of the family. They've been hidden for a long time. And then on this occasion, they said, I want my jollof rice. And mom is saying, no, I gave you some yesterday and you didn't eat it, so there's no jollof rice. What is going to do? The person is going to get aggressive.
Yeah.
They're going to run away. Then we call the police in, we call the crisis team in. They come, the person then get taken to hospital against their will. So we have what we call certification. So the person gets admitted to hospital against their will. They then get examined by a doctor, a psychiatrist, and if they are clearly not, I've used the word insightless previously,
Yeah.
and they're not willing to receive treatment, then they get put on compulsory. So they have to stay in hospital and receive treatment for a period of time. Sadly, the families then feel they can't cope with this person. What you mentioned, what the movies tell us, somebody having a knife or being aggressive, they're afraid to have these people back, and therefore they get discharged to a rooming house, public uh, place for a period of time. They do something silly, they get out,
Evicted.
and you can see, you cry that even when we talk about good mental health and things in this country, you go to Victoria Market after hours and you see this
Yes. On the side
roadside
there, yeah.
people sleeping,
Rough sleeping.
sleeping,
Yeah.
sleeping there. A lot of those people have mental health and drug and alcohol problems. Um, we have a project called Project Sunrise, and we are involved in educating the African youth. We've taken on the mantra to look after people from the age of 18 to 34. We were given 18 to 25, but we've pushed the barrel to 34 because sometimes people around that age don't have any relations or with the families for that support. So we look after people there, but also educate the family. We are trying to get people to think differently. Of course, the Western society, we still have our uncles, our aunties. You can go to any of those people to receive food. What happened to our Africans? Do we have any aunties or uncles that
Family
we can?
No, most of
Family
us are
support.
here by ourselves.
Yes.
A lot of us
So
are here by ourselves.
unfortunately, that's what's happening with us as well. We don't get help early. So by the time we get help, it's just too late. But when we look at the society in total, unfortunately, this is what is happening. Once you've gone in and out of hospital a number of times. You sometimes, for whatever reason, end up in the prison system as well. Then you lose all your connection with your family. So that can bring on poverty as well. Um, yes, we have a welfare system here, but it's still criteria people have to meet for the disability support pension, or for that matter, even on New Start allowance, they've got to fulfill those criteria. And if they don't, then they get cut off, then they become part of this
Cycle.
Yeah.
cycle.
In and out of
Yeah,
prison.
I want to ask something, right? Just what you touched on before. Do you feel, right, that sometimes all these negative things tend to get amplified? For example, you mentioned the videos and movies about this person stabbing. So, like, I have a family friend that actually he killed his they're in Canada. He actually ended up killing his father, right? And I think that a lot of those things tend to get amplified, but we don't really see success stories. For example, you mentioned the girl you're working with for, is it 15 years, they're taking medication, she's working. We don't hear stories like that. Even in Africa, all we hear is, oh, this guy, they crazy, oh, this man is mad. But we don't really see success stories of this person had a mental health issue affecting them. Do you think, I'm just curious though, do you think that could be a reason why people are not really, anytime they hear, oh my God, it's mental health, they run, they pull back, you know? And do you think there's a way we can actually with education and stuff like that actually change that paradigm?
So, you've used my beautiful word, and that's on the page of my book.
Oh, really?
It is, I want to change the paradigm from mental illness to mental wellness. And also, I have lots of positive stories, and maybe we should next time talk more about some of my positive stories.
Maybe just share one or
Yeah.
two.
I would
Yes,
love, I
I'll
would
have it.
love to hear about even for
Yeah.
the audience as well,
Yeah.
because all of us know negative stories,
Yeah.
but positive, we don't really have any we can bring
Yeah.
out.
I'm feeling very, very sad about the NDIS, or the National Disability Insurance Scheme, which has been turned into a very negative environment. And unfortunately, the people who I believe need the support are not getting the
getting
support,
support.
and therefore people. But I have clients who have been looking after even well before the NDIS, and sadly, the NDIS has come to overtake the negative stories. So I mentioned some of a lady with full diagnosis of schizophrenia was diagnosed when she was only 20, and for the next 20 years, she continued to live at home. She was on disability support pension, but by this time, she could drive. She was allowed to work, so she could work up to 15 hours a day. So she works at the school, she drives, she lives with her mom, and she was seeing a psychiatrist on a regular basis. And the psychiatrist referred her to me. We do what we were at the time we called a mental health nurses incentive program. So mental health nurses work with psychiatrists or GPs to support clients in the community. So she came to me. She wanted to move out of home. Mom is getting on in age, and she wants her independence. So I said, fantastic. Let's look at what we can do. After taking history and knowing her background, her interests, and everything, I said, okay, she's never at the age of 40 been away by herself to any place for a period of time. So I said, let's look at going away for a weekend. But rather than me doing the work, you can go and do the homework, and then we'll look at it. So we have an appointment schedule. I'll give you a hint. Maybe go to Ballarat for the weekend, or the Gold, take the bus, go to Phillip Island, or maybe go to the Yarra Valley. I have a long corridor where my business was at the time, and I said, I got called by the receptionist. Your client is here to see you. As we were walking down the corridor, before we got into the office, she said, I'm going to Cairns.
Wow.
And
Random.
Francis was like, oh my God, have I turned this woman into a manic? She's going to Cairns. But guess what? She had done her homework. This is another aspect I'll talk about holidays. She had done her homework. It was cheaper to go to Cairns for a full weekend
Then go
on
to
a
Flip
flight
Then
Island.
go to Ballarat.
and then go to Ballarat. So that was it. She went to Cairns for the weekend. Um, she survived. She came back, told a story. She met people. She socialized, and she loved it. So the next thing was, yes, she can still stay at home. She's got all her things,
Mm.
but why not move out of home, move while she still got the support from home? So she went and stayed in Bell City Hotel. They have some facility where you can stay for 4 weeks at a minimum cost. She still could go home. In fact, the place was even nearer to her work
Mm.
than coming from home. And the next thing, she got some housing accommodation. The rest is history. More recently, I have a lady who I've been seeing the whole family for the last 15 years or so. And unfortunately, she had a stroke at the age of 53.
Wow.
And I've continued to support her. We think, and I think, I usually say, think outside the square. I love my holidays, but at one stage, she was going to. In fact, this weekend, of all weekends, she's in Sydney
Wow.
with,
By herself or
with her new
new
boyfriend.
boyfriend? Wow.
But
So she's able to travel now by herself.
She she went to Italy twice last year. She traveled without, I repeat, a cent from the NDIS. She travels without 1 cent from the NDIS.
But the NDS
she's on-
they won't fund your
Yes.
travel.
Mm.
That's what I'm saying. Looking at the positive side of things. But without the NDIS, her quality of life may not have reached this stage.
That
Yeah.
stage.
Yeah.
Yeah. But she's able to drive. In fact, the NDIS didn't support that. We got her to get insurance from her total disability insurance. That gave her a modified car.
Mm.
Um, yeah, got able to get a modified car, learn how to drive a modified car.
Mm.
She drives. Of course, the NDI support her for physiotherapy
Yeah.
and other psychosocial needs.
Yeah.
Getting to
It's called community participation.
Yes, getting to other activities and having a cleaner and so on. But this is a transformed person
Yeah.
that can live in
Mm.
more than a normal
Normal life.
life and engage with other activities. And I have, as I said, a lot of the young men that I described earlier on with ADHD, because of the level of support that we've provided her,
Yeah.
provided him. We go back to school. I went to visit mom, and mom says, "My God, he's so settled."
Oh, wow.
At one stage, the kinder had to call us to come in and remove her from the school, the kinder environment, because she was so destructive. But we can support people in the community to have a quality of life.
Wow.
Quality of life.
That's beautiful.
Mm.
We've spent a lot of time now, and I really want to appreciate your experience that you shared with us. But just one final touch just before we close. How do we follow you? How do we people who are watching right now who have relatives who are experiencing mental illness and they want to reach out to Francis Aqua and say, please help us? how do they reach out to you?
Yeah, well, we are on social media of some form. We're not very good at it, but my program is on LinkedIn, Positive Wellness Recovery Center, or PWRC as you hear. People follow me on LinkedIn, on Facebook, and actually on Facebook, it's my personal Facebook, so I don't always accept strangers
Yeah.
or unless I know who they are. But people follow me on the other one was
Instagram.
Instagram.
Instagram. Um, uh, of course, yesterday I went to a function yesterday, and people were I think I was more fashion than the fashionista. They
Thank you so
said,
much. Thank you so much, Francis Zaka. It's a great honor to have you on the
Yeah.
podcast today. We're going to share Francis' LinkedIn details on the comment section, and also his business as well. If you are in Australia, even if you're in Ghana or whatever part of the world you're watching this podcast from now, and you have a loved one who is experiencing mental illness and is actually troubling you, you can reach out to Francis Aqua and he can guide you and maybe possibly even point you to the right direction how you can get help. Don't joke with your mental health. If you have the opportunity to travel, please travel. Take holiday. I know many African people here want to work 2 or 3 jobs because we have projects back home. We want to build a house. We want to build an investment. We want to take care of our family. But we should also know that we don't want to build a house and not be able to live in it because we're sick. We don't want to also work hard and build other people. And when we are sick, there's no one to help us. So please look after yourselves, and I'll see you guys on the next episode. Don't forget to subscribe to our YouTube channel, share this video. It's a great honor to, we would appreciate that support. So thank you so much, guys, for tonight.